Now that we have seen our new machinery, let's talk about how we manage power. Even though we are connecting a lot of machines, a 4 amps cable is enough because that's the maximum amperage we are producing. That power is provided by 4 steam turbines. Each one can use slightly more than 1500 steam per second, so a potting pipe with a flow speed of 6000 steam per second should be just enough. Talking of power flow, our cables have a loss of 1 EU per block, which means that we are losing voltage for each additional piece of cable we use. This has two main consequences. The first one is a loss of energy. The second one is that a single turbine could no longer be enough. But that's more advanced stuff. All of that is just to say that you should try to keep the most power intensive machines close to the generators. To run the heaviest recipes we are using a lot of steam. All of that steam comes from burning random stuff in our expanded railcraft boiler. It is now composed of 12 tanks, meaning it can produce 120 steam per tick, 2400 per second. That's less than half of our needs, but since we won't be running constantly at peak consumption, we can fix everything with a bigger buffer. And once we manage to stock up some steam, we can start using our workshop. The first thing we will want to do is to stock up some of the most used parts, starting from copper wire, steel plates and tin cables. Since we will need lots of those parts, we have equipped those machines with hoppers to do bigger unsupervised batches. And to avoid overfilling the output chests, we keep some of the excess stuff in some drawers close by. Now that we stocked up the basic parts, let's craft a batch of circuits. To help us keep track of the missing materials, we bookmark recipes ingredients in NEI. We do that recursively for all of the stuff we haven't stocked up, such as resistors, which we can now craft in a more efficient way with an assembler. There we also notice that we can double our yield by running copper through an arc furnace to anneal it. Next, we can improve our vacuum tube production process by using molten metals and annealed copper. Once we bookmarked all of the main steps we will be doing, we can link those together and apply the batch multiplier we want to achieve. Now we just have to collect those ingredients and mark them off once acquired. And to speed up, we can try to do multiple things at once. That's why we also have some duplicated machines. And that's how we can now quickly craft a batch of circuits. But before using those for new machinery, we should get a better source of fuel for our boiler. There are a lot of different fuels with many different ways of production, but for now we can stick with wood. So far we have been gathering it by manually chopping down trees, but we want a lower effort solution. We can do that in many different ways. The first one we will see is by using Steve's carts. As the name suggests, this involves some highly customizable main carts, which we shall equip with a wood cutter to achieve our objective. Assembling this cart will take quite some time, which we can use to prepare a track where it will be working. Once everything is ready, we can place our cart, give it fuel and admire our new automated wood source. At first sight, it may look slow and with low output, but don't be fooled by appearances. You can verify that it is indeed slightly better than a flint axe by looking at its internal storage while it does its job. It also has more durability than a flint axe. Speed aside, what matters is that it will autonomously bring wood to our base. To increase the combustion of this wood, we can pass it through an array of coke ovens to make charcoal, which we can then compress into blocks. Now, if you do not like to have a moving car that requires periodic diamond repairs, I have another option for you: forestry farms. Those run on cheaper materials but have a lot of moving parts. If you want a zero maintenance system that also has no constant block by block collection, I suggest moving on to IC2 crops, which outscores the other two systems in every way except for aesthetics. But the real potential of IC2 crops lies in crossbreeding and North berries. And here we can see a cultivation of aluminum and gold from seeds given by the questbook. On a side note, the fruit of those berries can be collected from when the plant reaches the third stage of growth. We could get a better yield by waiting for the fourth and last stage of growth, but for that the crops need a block of metal underneath, which we cannot afford yet. And the issue is that our crop manager will be waiting for that unreachable stage of growth. That means we will have to manually collect those for now. Later on, we will automate the collection by having a block of metal underneath, like we already did with gold. Our crop manager also needs a little bit of power, and we are feeding it with a super thin cable. This is a cheap cable which has no loss, meaning we can make it as long as we like. The downside is that it can only carry 8 volts, meaning we need a transformer. This transformer will output up to 4 amps, and since our crop manager can probably take at least 2 amps, we could end up burning the thin 1 amp cable. To ensure we do not exceed the maximum amperage, we can use cable diodes. In this case, a new LV machine hull. With that, we are running this cheap cable at its limit, 8 EU per tick, which is enough to harvest 40 crops per second. The next thing we should probably try to get is some aluminum ingots, both to fully automate our crops and to move on to the next stage. This requires an electric blast furnace, and the main challenge here is that some people could have issues locating a mica vein. One low effort foolproof way to do that is to first take a walk on some mountains with an ore finder wand looking for pure tin. This will find us a cassiterite vein, from which we can take some samples of cassiterite ore, not to be confused with cassiterite sand. Now that we have cassiterite ore, we can easily locate mica, meaning we can build an EBF. And this machine is going to be one more wiring challenge. That's because most of its processes will require 120 EU per tick, and even one less will cause the machine to fail and void items. To achieve such power, we will need at least 4 amps of low voltage. As we have already seen, the issue is cable power loss, and if we are not careful, we could easily fail to meet the requirements. Sometimes, that could be just as easy as disconnecting a single cable connection. And we must also not forget to use a good enough pipe to feed those turbines. On a side note, I often get asked why I always restricted pipe flow direction. And this is one other thing that may change between updates and GregTech versions, but from testing it right now, I will say that for a point-to-point pipe it doesn't really make much of a difference. However, if we add some dead-end ramification, we can start to see some backflow that will slow down the main pipe flow. I will say that you should do that just to make the behavior more predictable. Now that we have a working EBF and aluminum, we can also get gallium arsenide in order to make the new tire of circuits, thus moving to the MV age. So, after getting a circuit assembler to cut the cost of making more circuits, we rushed our first MV machine, an extruder. We really wanted this machine as soon as possible because it will make crafting parts way easier and cheaper. Next, before doing more progress in this tire, we should fix our energy production. We could upgrade our railcraft boiler or get more solar boilers, but an interesting option is also the bronze boiler. This one can make enough steam to power 3 blast furnaces and reaches working temperature in less than a minute, making fuel management easier. With that, we can now get into MV tasks. Or better yet, let's start from automating stuff we could have done in the previous tire.